Hello, sorry, I was on mute. Let's start. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Social Media Managers Clinic Q&A with Ravi Shukle from Agora Pulse. Hi, Ravi, how are you doing?
Yeah, great for having me on the show, Lucy. Super excited to speak with everyone in the digital women community today.
Absolutely. So we're streaming live in the Facebook community, on LinkedIn, and also on the Facebook page today. And if you have any questions, please do type them in the comments area and we'll put them up on the screen and I will ask them to Ravi and Ravi will answer them. So who is Ravi? So Ravi is country manager at Agora Pulse UK and Ireland. He's been working in social media for 10 years, agency side and also with international brands. So he's really experienced and ready to answer all your questions. A really exciting fact I want to share as well about Ravi is that he was the first social media manager to work on the 2012 Olympics with Samsung UK. And he's been telling me just a minute ago about all the exciting things that he got to do during that period. So welcome, Ravi. Tell us a bit more about that before we get into the Q&A.
Yeah, so that feels like many years ago when you say 2012, but it was exciting because it was we were a lead sponsor for the Olympics, and obviously, Samsung is phones, so we were the only kind of phone company that could talk about the Olympics directly. So live tweeting and engaging with it was pretty crazy because what it meant was, if anyone's familiar with London, you obviously know Piccadilly Circus has the big screen. Whenever people tweeted, I was actually the guy that controlled what tweets would go on the screen and how that would beam up to everyone. And then they used to have a torch relay where people carry the golden torch and run around, and you had to kind of follow that through city by city and tweet and keep up with the conversation. So it's pretty exciting, especially since the guys who were carrying the torches were like local heroes. So it's more like a local way to give back, but to be behind the scenes was pretty intense, kind of tweeting nonstop and just to see how it works from a brand's point of view in terms of what's involved.
Sounds like it was a really exciting experience.
Yeah, it was really good. I think definitely once in a lifetime opportunity to work on something that huge, especially since myself as a social media manager, it must have been my first or second year. So it was like a wow experience to be part of something that big.
Absolutely. And Emma from Fresh Approach Digital here is saying she works on the London 2012 Olympics as well. So there you go. There's a link there already to something. So guys, please feel free to ask Ravi your questions. We will be answering them live. And it doesn't matter what platform you're on, you can ask them. But I have a few questions to get started, if that's all right. So Ravi, tell me, what makes a good social media manager?
Wow, you went straight in with a massive big question. I guess one of the ones that not many people say is patience. Because I think depending on whether you're working for a in-house team or an agency, everyone wants results and they want it really quickly. And obviously, every business has seen stuff go viral and stuff get loads of shares, and you obviously expect the same to happen to you. But I think if you're creating content on a daily basis as a social media manager, doing all the tweeting, doing all the ads, just be patient with the process because you will grow your results over time. But having that one viral hit is super, super rare unless like timing and everything happens at the exact perfect point. So I guess one of the key tips I'd have is be patient with the process, like take your time to understand each of the channels that you're on, and to understand who the people are that are in those communities and get to know them, and you'll find a lot more of a sensible and longer term strategy to grow rather than trying to find what the next big thing is.
Yeah, I think that can be the issue, can't it? People just want those results immediately and don't want to spend the time creating the content and building the right communities first. Thank you, Ravi. We have a question here from Facebook user. And the question is, how often do you recommend you post content across the medias?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess it obviously depends on the social channel that you're talking about. So if we just take the kind of big ones like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and even YouTube, You want to post probably daily as a minimum, but how often you post on each of those will obviously depend on how many followers you have. Like for example, on Facebook, we know organically the reach is at 1 to 2%. So, hardly any fans are seeing it on a day-to-day basis compared to maybe your other channels, unless you're obviously supporting it with paid. But to answer your question, you want to be posting at least daily on your social channels. And then if your posts are doing well, the interaction is going up, you can obviously increase that to 2 or 3 times. And if you're talking about Instagram or LinkedIn, where it's like stories and something a bit more real time, you can obviously increase that on a daily basis and test that out, because it's super quick and easy to put something out.
Fantastic. Thank you. I hope that answered your question, Facebook user. Okay, so I have a question for you. So what do you think is the biggest social media the biggest mistake you could make as a social media manager?
Oh wow. I think not understanding your numbers could be the biggest mistake, because everyone who works in social media obviously works super hard to create the right type of post, the look, the feel. We schedule it out. We kind of do all the strategy the right way. But if at the end of everything, there's no, well, what happened after I did that, it's going to be very hard to convince your boss or your client that what you're actually doing is working. So I think when you are starting out, in terms of the mistake, don't forget to check your numbers or your metrics or your reporting in terms of what you'd like to measure and what your client or manager wants to see from the social channels, because those numbers are going to be far more important to them than maybe followers and some of the other things that you as a social media manager are obviously proud of, but then you want to share the right thing to them to make sure they understand the real value. I think that's one of the biggest myths with does social media have an ROI? It's, well, choose the right things to focus on and to measure, and obviously make sure you're tracking that regularly.
Really super good advice, Ravi. Thank you. I hope that helps. And we have another question here from Sarah Irving now. Hi, Ravi. What's the best piece of advice you could give?
Wow, that's a super open-ended question. For me personally, even though I've been doing this 10 years, it's the same advice that even applies to me, and that's just get started. I'm one of those guys that if I like design an image or maybe try and create something, I kind of wait for it to be perfect sometimes. And the best way is, especially now, is if you've got a message to share, something to teach, some kind of value to give, just put it out first. And then based on what people say, you can always tweak that and improve on it. But for now, the best piece of advice I'd say is get started, get posting and start getting feedback. And while you might be nervous in terms of like, is it good enough or will people listen? The first thing you're going to get from someone is the feedback when you start posting. So get started first, and then you're going to find it gets a lot easier after that to start creating content and actually finding your own voice and your own message.
Thank you, Ravi. Sarah, I hope that answered your question well. We have another question actually from, Stuart. I was going to ask this other one. Stuart, hi, Stuart. Ravi, what's the most exciting bit of content you've seen from a brand over the last few months? Good question, Stuart.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's so many different brands doing so many different things with social. I guess, obviously, with everything in the news, it's kind of hard to see much else in terms of what campaigns and stuff have been trending. In the last few months, I'm not sure there's anything particular that springs to mind. I know that there's always been like trends that I've seen on social that companies have really grasped really well. So like if a particular topic is trending, they've maybe spun that around to showcase it for them. I think some of the creative stuff I've seen, it might be a little bit older than a few months ago, is I know recently, because everyone has been not able to go to shops and everything, I've seen companies using QR codes really well for campaigns, just to kind of scan to get information. It might be like menus, or it could be more information about the business, but obviously not physically allowed in. So I've seen a lot of businesses use the QR code campaigns really well in the last couple of months. And I think some of those campaigns have really stood out, because you almost think posters are like something you did 50 years ago, but having it through a QR code means everyone gets all the information on their phone. And when you are traveling out and about, I think those campaigns have kind of stood out the most. So yeah, Stuart, obviously can't pinpoint a specific one, but I remember seeing a couple that I've used those really well. And if I find those, I'll make sure I link it to you guys as well.
Thank you. Thank you. And we have another question here from Facebook user. What are the best platforms to collect data on your content / results, etc.?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of the social channels already offer the data on your content, so they already have reporting built in. And these are things like your likes, your engagement, your shares, your reach, and your impressions. That's going to tell you how many people are seeing it, how many people interacted with it, and obviously how many people shared it. So those are available on most platforms already built in. Now, if you obviously want a little bit more in-depth information in terms of your reporting, then you can use a social media tool. Like, for example, obviously, GoraPulse is sponsoring today, so I like to use GoraPulse where I can see all the data in one place. But if you're just looking for day-to-day, like what's been happening on your posts, there's an insights tab or setting on most of the social channels where you can just see the basic information. And then for anything more advanced, or if you want to send reports to clients or your boss or your manager, you can use a tool which obviously helps package all of that up.
Brilliant, thank you. And we have another question here. What are your thoughts on the Bernie chair by IKEA? Ravi Rose posted on Saturday. It was actually faked, but received so many hits / shares. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's definitely where one Bernie chair, the kind of trend that's gone viral. I don't know if you actually saw, Lucy, but obviously Bernie himself caught onto the trend, and he sold a sweatshirt with the actual meme on it. And it sold out almost instantly, and he donated all that money to charity. So that would actually answer Stuart's question about the best campaign I've seen the last few months, someone like Bernie himself. But to answer the question, yeah, I think what we talked about earlier is if you're able to time a trend well and it's kind of fit in with what your brand can do, obviously adding a bit of humor helps, then what IKEA have done have just used that to time it perfectly. Obviously, the image faked is probably not so much what people care about. It's more actually how clever they are with it and that they've thought of something like that. So I think a tip would be, obviously, we're not saying use fake images, but in this case, it was used in a humorous way. So it obviously everyone got that across, and it's huge brand awareness for someone like IKEA as well. So I think it was a good move from their part.
Absolutely, absolutely. Being reactive is so important, isn't it, these days? Okay, so we have another question here. What are your top 3 tips for utilising social media to grow brand awareness with no marketing budget at all? And in brackets, it says charity.
Yeah, it's a good question. So utilizing social media for brand awareness for charity, most charities are locally based, meaning they either cover a certain area or location. So what you can do initially is look at Facebook groups or smaller communities for those areas, and obviously join those to kind of get a feel of what people are saying about the area and the community. And especially at times like this, what you find is a lot of people are actually open to help. There's other social networks who are a bit more niche, like, for example, like Nextdoor, which is like a local community-based app where you register with your address and you share everything that's going on in your area. Now, if you're a charity, you could take the standpoint of sharing stories and things about people in your local area, obviously to bring that awareness and to make it more relatable. And obviously that brings more eyeballs on what you do and your charity. And obviously in return, people can then, donate or find out more about what you do. So the short answer there would be to look at closed communities for your local area. Look at sharing user-generated content, which is another way of saying if anyone who donates or gives to the charity is tweeting or sending out images, ask their permission if you can reuse that and use that as a marketing way to kind of get the message out across and to show people how others are helping the community. And that type of content in particular for charities obviously helps increase shares. And then something like Nextdoor, where you can have a community-based app, can really bring eyeballs on what you're doing in the local area. So look at closed communities and kind of local communities within apps like Nextdoor.
Brilliant advice. Thank you for that, Ravi. I hope that was helpful. So we have Benjamin Ambrose has a question. So Ravi, how would you go about leveraging a trend? Great question.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Benjamin. Well, we talked about the IKEA example. The number one thing is not every trend is going to be your friend, in the sense that just because it's trending, it doesn't mean it's right for your business. Like IKEA, it was a chair. Bernie's sitting down. There's a whole thing about, okay, it fits well together. Leveraging a trend would be obviously first looking at what's trending that particular day, seeing if you can tie it into your business in a natural way. Like if you were a furniture store or a department and you're talking about Bernie chair, you know there's a fit because it's, you know, he's sitting down. There's a way you can tie it in. So look for a way that you can tie it into your business or your message, and then obviously create that from your point of view. And obviously then if you're using the trending hashtags, you have a lot higher chance of that being picked up and to kind of piggy bank off the exposure. But make sure there's a natural fit there. I think one of the biggest mistakes I've seen, I don't know if your listeners are from UK or outside UK, but a huge one was a gym company, and it was Black History Month, and they kind of used 12 Years a Slave as a workout name, and it kind of just went all downhill from there, because the funny thing is the guy himself didn't really get it approved, but he thought it was okay. So there was no team to double check that, and he thought it, because it was trending with Black History Month, it would be a great idea to post, and it got taken down straight away. They obviously apologized, but again, it's an example of how not to do it if there isn't a natural fit there, or there isn't a way to talk about it without it kind of sounding forced.
I saw that. That was a little bit cringy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Every social media marketer was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So moving on. But I hope that helped Benjamin. And Elizabeth Dunn is asking, how do you overcome talking to yourself whilst trying to build engagements?
Yeah, I think what she's saying is if there isn't that many followers and it's just you kind of in the comments or responding to yourself, how do you overcome that? I think what you have to do is test out different types of content, maybe open-ended questions, maybe ask your fans for feedback. If you're a bit worried about posts getting low engagement or no one seeing that, obviously, depending on the number of fans you've got, that's just a natural part of the process. Not every post is going to get loads of tons of likes, and I wouldn't feel disheartened as a social media manager, because those days do happen. Even if you're working on a big brand, they still have days where the posts get only a handful of likes compared to what they originally post. But to maybe try and avoid that, maybe you can use things like polls and questions where it's easy for people to do one-click responses, and then the engagement you'll find is a lot higher than if you ask them a more complicated or long-term question. Start off by doing those polls. I know most social networks support that. And it's a great way for you to get feedback, which you can then turn into content and be like, oh, hey, this fan shared their favorite baking recipe and I wanted to share it with all of you in my cooking community or whatever. You can see how then you use that content from your fans to create more content. And that way the pressure is not on you to obviously find something new to post every day.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's really, really good. Thanks, Elspeth. I hope that was helpful. And we have Emma from Fresh Approach. She says, have you seen any evidence to support that real-time posts get more engagement / reach, etc., than scheduled posts?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's a debate that's actually been happening for years. And obviously at Agora Pulse, we're a social media management tool as well, where we schedule. And it's one of the key questions we get from our users as well, as in, should you be posting in real time or scheduling? Well, the truth is there's no actual research to specifically pinpoint that if you schedule a post, it will get less engagement. I think where the kind of issues arise with the content is if you're scheduling the same thing over and over again, it's obviously going into your feed, and that can obviously affect engagement because people know it's scheduled and it feels a bit robotic. But posting in real time beats scheduling basically hasn't got any direct correlation in terms of whether the engagement or reach will be impacted. So if you're running a brand or running a business, obviously I'd advise using a mixture of both, because we talked about trending topics that you want to share in real time, and scheduled stuff could be at the time of this recording, Valentine's Day is like a month out. Maybe you've got some plans to do a competition or a contest or an announcement, then that kind of thing you can schedule in advance so it's already on the day, so you're not having to find out where your images and stuff are. So use scheduling for those kind of occasions, but obviously mix it with real time as well, to make sure that you can capitalize on any trends or anything that customers or questions that people might have.
Absolutely great advice. Thank you, Ravi. So do you think it's best to be trained in both social media management and ads management? I'm mulling over the idea of doing an ads course. Is it worth it in the long term?
Yeah, that's another great question. Social media manager role is so broad. I think when I first started this, like a handful of years ago, like we said, people just thought all I did all day long was tweeting and writing some Facebook posts. But there's way more to it than just what goes out on a social channel. So with regards to ads, I would say definitely learn the ads platform. It's definitely a good skill to have in your arsenal. Now, depending on your company and who your clients are, or your manager or your boss, paid ads itself is obviously a unique skill on its own. So you can actually have a paid specialist to deal with the ads itself. But if you have the knowledge through the course, like you mentioned, then you're able to at least comment and give suggestions on how you can best use that budget. And I think that's going to give more value to your client or your boss or your manager, because they can see that you obviously understand how it works. So even if it's being managed by someone else, I'd say it's useful for you to learn, so you've got the knowledge in terms of how it works and how you can get results using those ads. So hopefully that's answer your question in terms of both. So definitely it's never a bad time to learn a new skill, especially if it's something like Facebook ads, because things are changing on a regular basis.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ravi. I hope that was helpful to you. And I actually have a question. So obviously social media has changed a lot in the last 10 years. There's new tools and that kind of thing that are coming out all the time. But what tactics that you may have used to use like 8 years ago or something like that, would you never be doing today?
Oh, wow, that's a really good one. I guess some of the tactics I used way back then will be like engagement. You can't say engagement baiting, but kind of engagement-led posts where you can where you were choosing like thumbs up or heart for this or yes or no, like you're purposefully creating that engagement from a post. Those used to work really well years and years ago, because it wasn't seen as gaming the system. It's just like a fun way for you to interact. I think over the years, people and brands and companies can obviously sniff out when something like that is quite forced. The funny thing is, it's a bit of a double-sided coin, because I saw a funny meme which was like, toilet paper you hang on the wall, whether the roll should be facing on the top or the bottom, and it had like 15,000 shares or something crazy. Or even there was one about toast, and they were like, from light brown to dark brown, what number do you prefer? So they obviously work because the questions are so open. But for a business or social media manager, those tactics that used to work back then probably wouldn't really work now. Although you'll still get engagement, I would say the bottom goal for a social media manager or a company is obviously to get more potential leads or customers or clients from the business. So if you had a related one about your business, I would flip it now if I was doing it today and say, do you like my product in yellow or blue, and use the same tactic but make it a bit more relevant rather than something as broad as tea or toilet paper, basically.
Thank you, Ravi. I guess, yeah, it depends if it's relevant as well to your actual business. If it's
of course,
then it's not really much point in doing it. So we have a question from Benjamin again. So when running paid ads, do you find targeted client sheets to be beneficial? Thanks again. Oh, sorry, there was another question further up. We'll go with Benjamin's for now. Yeah,
go Benjamin's
client sheets.
So I guess with targeted client sheets, I'm guessing you're kind of mapping out the kind of audience that particular client wants in terms of the targeted sheets, or what you should look out for and kind of all the targeting. I guess it depends on the client's needs. Even I've worked with many different clients or businesses where some of them, all they care about is how much website traffic we got. And another one will be like, well, how many people actually bought after they landed on the site? And another one could be like, well, how many emails did we get? So find out what metrics are important to your client via the ads, and obviously try and optimize for that. Because if it's website traffic, the way you set up the ads and targeting is going to be completely different to a conversion ad where they actually want an end result from it. So like a sign up, buying a product, or even filling in a form. So I'd focus on the end goal for the ad and set up the ad to reflect the client's end goal rather than doing a broader approach. So tailor the ad to the client's end goal and obviously focus on that metric as a conversion. So hopefully, I think that's what you mean by client sheets, to kind of have something as a way for them to track, but base it on their most important metric.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ravi. Thanks, Benjamin. We have another question. How much time do we need to understand if certain posts aren't really working if we're just starting? And let's say the public is around 2,000 people.
Yeah, so obviously I don't know what channel you're talking about in particular, but since you're on Facebook, let's just take Facebook. If you have 2,000 people, I think on average you're going to get like 100 to 200 people reaching and looking at your posts. While that might not sound huge, your average post might be like between 2 and 4 or 2 and 5 likes or comments. So with that kind of engagement, how long should you wait to see if it's doing well? Usually a couple of days. What you could do as a social media manager, a good tip is, if anyone comments on your post, we all know that you should be responding to them. But an additional tip I'd advise is ask them an open-ended question. Don't just say thanks for the feedback or I appreciate that. Maybe ask a question on the back of that brings them back to the page. As you'll find, that will also open up the chances for you to get to know them better, but also it may allow them to bring other people in. So they may start tagging their friends or someone else who may find the conversation really good. I know a big thing trending on social and in groups is people just like to follow conversations, and there's different acronyms for it, but some people type in F, some people type in follow. They just want to be part of a thread where they know they're going to get value from it. So reply with questions, wait a couple of days to see if the engagement is higher or lower than your average. And if it's lower, maybe try, like I said, respond to them with a question to see if that helps boost the numbers up, or try a different type of content. Maybe did pictures before, try video, maybe did video before, try text. So again, switch it up to see what makes a difference and what your kind of fans prefer.
Thanks, Ravi. We have another one from Facebook. So re-engagement again. Do you need to be responding/reacting to people commenting on your post immediately?
Yeah, that is actually the $1 million question. Not immediately, because it's not realistic. And what I mean by that is we can't be sitting around 8 hours a day responding to someone at 12:52, 1:53, 2:51. Like, it's impossible to have that range. And even if you use a social media tool to track the mentions, it would have to mean that you'd be there on the spot to answer everything in real time. But what is going to be more scalable when answering the questions is have a window, aim for a window of between 30 minutes to an hour. I think that way you can manage your time. Me personally, I would, if possible, I would have a time in your day where you just respond to comments. If anything urgent comes in, that's like from someone who's influential or a customer that might be unhappy, that needs to be responded to right away. If it's general questions, maybe pick a time in your day where you're a bit more free and you can power through the whole list. So leave real-time responses for urgent inquiries, like we said, angry customers, or someone's not happy, or something's happened in your business that you really need to respond to there and then. And then for the everyday comments, where it's just Q&A, FAQs, or etc., kind of leave a part of the day where you like to go through all of those. So a quieter time in your day where you can actually concentrate and reply to everyone.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ravi. And we have a question from Edmund Jones on LinkedIn. Edmund says, give me an example of how you use data to grow social media engagement and influence.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when I first started at Agora Pulse, one of the key things we wanted to do was how could we raise the profile of people who are doing great work in social media in the UK. And obviously, that's a big thing to ask when you're first starting out. How can we raise them? Who do we speak to? Where do we find these people? So we use data to look at, to find who the most engaged communities are on social networks and where people like to talk about social media. For example, like in this digital women group, people like to talk about digital, and it's a very engaged community of people who like to ask loads of different questions. We use the data to identify where those people hang out, and we approach the people in those groups who eventually then became our speakers for the event. And because of that, we found the actual event itself was a huge success. I think we had 23 speakers, over 2,000 attendees. And we use data to inform who those kind of people would be good fit for that actual event. So using data doesn't necessarily mean just engagement and shares. It could also be using data to find people or do research on companies and to find who people could be good to work with. So we used it in that instance, and that event was all online, virtual learning, and we felt that data on social helped us to find those key speakers, which helped to lead to a successful event.
Brilliant, thank you, and thanks, Ravi. I hope that helped you, Edmund. And we have another question from another Facebook user. Ravi, what are the biggest changes that social media marketers faced after 2020 that you have noticed?
So I guess he's talking in the last 26 days, literally, because we're literally in the first month. Well, it's not a mystery that everyone who's got an iPhone has obviously, heard of Clubhouse and kind of been on the kind of app, and it's more like a unique one-to-one experience with someone, like an actual, let's just call it a virtual phone call, if you will. So one of the big changes is closed communities I've seen. People really respect their privacy and like it to be respected in return. And having the close-knit conversations means the whole world doesn't necessarily see what you're talking about or the questions you share. So groups and closed communities, I think, will be a big thing this year, because people just want a one-on-one or a closed conversation with someone, or a small group where they feel a bit more comfortable compared to things being out in the open, especially as more and more people are getting more open and honest with their interactions with businesses or brands. I think that closed community approach to how you deal with your customers and fans would be big. So closed groups, one-to-one interactions, things like rooms, like we talked about for Clubhouse, and that kind of interaction will kind of lead people to be a lot more engaged with you, and you'll get to know them a lot better. So I think that's one trend we'll see growing throughout the year. Brilliant.
Thank you, Ravi. Yeah, Clubhouse is certainly making strides at the moment, isn't it? I wonder, do you think there's going to be more audio social networks coming out, or do you think Instagram will make another tab, for example, for audio now?
Yeah, I think if you can contain it. So the problem with, not the problem, but one key issue with the big apps like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram is it almost feels like they launch a new app to do something different. Top of my head, I think Facebook has like 3 or 4 apps just for messaging, video calls, chat, and it's kind of a lot for the average person to keep up with. So if the big players can integrate that into their network, so like Instagram had a nice way to go into a private room directly where you can chat to 5 or 6 people, not like a group chat, but more like for businesses to hang out and ask questions. That could be a good game changer. But I think with Clubhouse, they definitely have to innovate to keep people on there, because it's obviously exciting because it's new. There was something similar with Blab back in the day, which was video conferencing, and that kind of slowly died out because they didn't kind of keep up with the time. So unless Clubhouse innovate and manage the demand now while it's hot, then we will see things like Facebook and Instagram come up with their own versions, where would be maybe having mini rooms within the actual feed or actual social profile itself.
Yeah, because Facebook already have rooms, don't they? I think.
Yeah. I think it hasn't taken off in the sense that compared to something like Clubhouse where people know. But again, if the bigger social networks can realize that people want this one-on-one conversation, then you're definitely going to see some features come out that's going to kind of copycat and try and find a way of giving people the same value in return.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, I think that brings us to an end today. It's been really great talking to you, Ravi. Is there anything that you want to kind of round up with or mention that you think is going to happen in the next few months with social media management? Or is there any kind of top tips that you want to leave everybody with so that they can go away and implement?
Yeah, I think one top tip is don't be discouraged if your posts don't fly off the shelves with engagement, likes and retweets and stuff. That will happen. Avoid perfection. So don't be afraid to put your posts out straight away. Kind of test first and then react afterwards. And then one last thing is, we talked about it in the earlier questions, just understand your numbers very simply. Like if you're a freelancer, a consultant, a social media manager, we all want you to get results from social media, whether it's sales, bookings or whatever, but understand what that thing is, if it's bookings, emails or sales, and then try and use your social channels to drive more people to achieve that result. So have a strategy to get you closer to the goals that you want, and don't be afraid to get started with your posting.
Thank you, Ravi. And thank you, Ravi. Everybody's saying thank you, hugely insightful. And aside from Agora Pulse, which we know is fantastic, are there any other tools that you think social media managers should definitely have in their toolkit right now?
Oh wow, there's loads. Super quick one. I'm a tab hoarder. Like I have at least 20 tabs a day open. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So for me, for those who use Chrome, hopefully there's no random Internet Explorer people here. So unfortunately, if there is, this is a Chrome thing. But there's an extension called Session Manager, and what it does is if you have 5 or 10 or 15 tabs open at any one time, you can actually save it and rename it something. So I could call it Digital Women and have 5 tabs open. And then tomorrow when I log in, I just have to click Session Manager and open the 5 tabs exactly where I left off from. So you don't have to remember stuff. The only danger is just be careful if you start hoarding them and it ends up being a 20 or 30. But it's a free Chrome extension, Session Manager. It's a game changer because if you're managing multiple clients and pages and you want to have all your tabs in the same place, so it saves me a whole bunch of time every day.
That is such a good tip because I'm definitely going to need that. And I'm sure so many people that work in social media as well. Listen, is there any way you can write that down on the screen? Just say Session Manager as a tool so that everybody can see it. If not, we'll just put it into the comments afterwards.
Yeah, you can just search that in the Google Chrome store and you should find it. It's like a cardboard box icon with a green arrow.
There you go. We've got it up on the screen now. So, Ravi, thank you so much for that. That was hugely insightful. You can see by all of the comments how people have really enjoyed it. How can people now get in touch with you after this? Also, just a quick note before you tell us, this is going to be happening every single month, isn't it, throughout this year? So
yes.
So whatever your questions, get them ready because every month Ravi's going to answer them for you. So, Ravi, how can people get in contact with you and with Agora Pulse?
Yeah, sure. So with Agora Pulse, we're the easiest way would be on Twitter. We're at Agora Pulse UK IRL. Sounds like a bit of a mouthful, but again, we have an at Agora Pulse global account, but the UK one is the one that I'm obviously part of and that we're looking to grow. And me on a personal level, you can find me hanging out over on YouTube. It's just youtube.com/user/Ravi Shukle, or just search for my name, Ravi Shukle, on YouTube. And I've started a new channel there because I like to take my own advice and not wait for things to be perfect. So I'm fully going in on YouTube this year, so I'll be excited to answer any questions people have on social media there as well. And obviously a big shout out to Lucy. Thank you for having me on the show. I know we met at a Digital Women actually event in person, and hopefully when things calm down, we get to do that again soon. But I'm super excited on a personal level and for Agora Pulse to be obviously working with Digital Women to bring you these talks every single month. So if you guys got any themes and topics, maybe we can cover those in the following months. And I can obviously make sure I answer all of this for you. So super excited to be part of this. And again, thank you, Lucy, for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here, Ravi. And thank you everybody else for joining in as well. Please do join in to the next one, which we'll put the dates out shortly for when that's going to be. And also don't forget to join the Digital Women Facebook community, which is just type in Digital Women. And yes, it's recorded. It will be going on our YouTube channel as well. It's actually going to be our first actual live video on the YouTube channel. Most of them are hidden at the moment. So it's going to be really exciting. And you can check us out as well at digitalwomen.live. So thanks again, Ravi. Have a fantastic day. And we will see you again next month.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Look forward to speaking to you soon. Take care.